Welcome back to our coverage of the Mackinac Policy Conference. I'm Christy McDonald. So glad that you're joining me, and I'm so glad that this person is joining me at the desk right now. It's Matt Elliott. He's the Detroit Market President of Bank of America. Matt, it is always good to see you up here at Mackinac.
Thank you, Christy. It's great to be here.
Yeah, you know what? A lot of really interesting conversations, and I think connections coming out of where we've been the last couple of years, and finally being able to say, all right, how can we all work together again once we've removed our silos of just trying to get by these last couple of years, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the conversation has been around how do we come together. You know, when we think about that at Bank of America, we have this belief in our company that we drive things through the power of and. Like we can deliver for shareholders and stakeholders, and we can solve big problems. Like we can help drive down barriers to mobility for communities of color. But that and thinking is where solutions lie. You know, if you want to stay in the or, black or white, Republican or Democrat, you stay in the problem. If you really want to move things forward, and I think Arn has done a wonderful job of that with the conference,
right,
is driving things towards an and.
And I think that's what's really interesting about where we are in Michigan right now is because it feels like we have several really large global issues with the state that is going to need cohesive thought from a lot of different places when it either comes to emphasis on education, talking a lot about diversity and equity and inclusion in our workforces, and that of course it makes moral sense to have all different kinds of voices at the table, but also the call for it makes economic sense to diversify our companies and make sure that more people are included. But it's finding that sensibility and that common ground with a lot of different people and saying, look, we have a chance here now with an infusion of money from the federal government coming out of what we have just experienced to make some big changes here in the state.
That's exactly right. And I think what's important is for everybody to get centered around a common set of principles.
Okay.
You know, so for example, Launch Michigan around education. The work that I'm going to talk about later today that I've been a part of with this organization called the Blueprint Group, which is an organization that's designed to help create some framework to think about equity as we drive, racial equity forward through the lens of how does it work in economic development, how does it work as we develop the city, and so it needs to work for block captains, it needs to work for CEOs and everybody in between, and it's all based on this idea of we can drive forward economically and be inclusive. And in fact, there's no other way to do it.
So talk to me a little bit about that work, because it's very deliberate. It's not just saying, okay, well, we'll think about that as a corporation. It has to be ingrained in culture, and it has to be a continued driver and led from the top. Talk about some of that work.
Well, the work has been, for me personally, very rewarding, enriching, and challenging. Because what we have to first and foremost acknowledge is that there are systems that we all live and work in that drive different outcomes based on your racial profile, that based on your zip code, based on lots of different things.
Yeah.
And so it's those systems that we need to come together and change using data, using facts, so that we can agree on the path forward. And this is why Gallup, for example, the Gallup organization is going to help benchmark some data that we can use and track our progress, and also agreed on a shared sense of experience. So it's that data, as well as the real lived experience of our residents and our friends that sort of informs us on our progress. And it's going to take a walk to make happen. But I think first and foremost, acknowledging that these systems need to change if we want to have better outcomes for all of us. We need better educational outcomes. We need better employment outcomes. All those things are driven by systems that, frankly, you and I control. These are the systems we've created, and it's our job to fix them.
You know what, I just had Michael Rafferty from New Detroit on here and talking about that, and really just coming to the point where acknowledging that there is bias, that there is racial bias in systems, and acknowledging that, yes, it's okay, it's there. So now how are we going to tackle it? And that anecdotally, you can't say, well, that's never happened to me, so I really can't understand that. When you talk about having data and using this shared set of facts, and then along with anecdotally things that are happening, it's a powerful combination. And it's the real conversations that need to happen. And sometimes that's very scary for people to drop down their guard and say, I do have bias.
It is. And interestingly enough, Michael's on that same group. He and I have had this conversation about bias. And it's one of the reasons why the first point of some of the things we believe as a group is that systemic racism exists. He and I actually put that bullet point in. The thing that's interesting, though, is that conversation needs to work for people who experience it every day. And as a guy who's, a 55-year-old white guy from DeWitt, Michigan, I don't experience every day except through the experiences of friends and folks who are close to me. But we have to be able to, in rooms where maybe people of color aren't present, be able to talk about how it exists, but also how it affects you. The fact that we have bias, just because I may not experience in my day-to-day life, it does affect us all as residents and Michiganders. Because if we had more people who weren't living in an experience or a system that's biased, they'd be more successful, which is we'd be more successful as a state. We're all connected. And I think that's, again, goes back to this concept of and, not or.
It also, I think, makes people feel heard. I mean, that we are at this point now, people can finally feel heard and understood.
Yes.
And I think that is powerful coming from the top. And when you're having these conversations with other business leaders, especially now here at Mackinac, which is it's ripe for this, what are they telling you?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that, as it relates to being heard that I think is really important is this idea of being able to have some information, some facts, and some ideas that I can walk into a room and I can speak for the Mike Raftery's and the people that he represents, people of color in the neighborhoods in the city of Detroit, who I don't personally know, but I can speak for them when they're not there. That's sponsorship, right? I've been on the receiving end or the beneficiary end of people who have sponsored me when I wasn't in there, and it's really important, I think, for all of us to sponsor each other in whatever format that takes.
And I think, also looking at when you are in staff meetings and when you have middle level management and then you have people that are just beginning in their careers, to be able to see people in positions that they can emulate and see themselves in. Diversity, whether it is women in the room, people of color, that it is more important than ever that people can see that and the encouragement and the trajectory and say there is a path here and getting more diversity in the room and different voices.
Yeah, one of the, I think, obligations of leadership that we have is we have to understand the shadow that we cast. And that the things that you allow in your culture, the things that you do in your culture really set the stage for what's allowable and okay. And so if you're a leader who is inclusive, you're as a leader who is sponsoring people, you're as a leader who makes sure that voices are lifted up that maybe historically haven't been, that starts to create a culture of allowing and of people being seen and heard. And that is a powerful thing. We know, at our B of A research, we know that diverse companies make better decisions, they're better run, they're more successful. That's sort of the business case. The human case is if you want to be a great employer, if you want to have a rich experience and be successful long term, you have to have everyone's voice at the table. It's an and not an or.
So let's switch a little bit and let's talk a little bit about business and the climate, the investing climate in the city of Detroit right now, people being access to capital. Kind of give us a little bit of a look at what things are like right now.
It's a very interesting moment because on the one hand, when we look at our own Bank of America consumer card spend data and our own account data, frankly, the American consumer is in a better shape than they were pre-pandemic. So people have more money in their bank accounts. People are spending more money. So that's a positive thing in terms of keeping the economy going. On the other hand, the complexity of the current global economy is really amazing. So you've got rising interest rates, you've got the war in of food, of energy, you name it. These are all really complex things to try to manage through. What I've been really impressed with is the fact that there is just a general sense of optimism on the part of most of our clients. I cover a lot of middle market and lower middle market clients in the state of Michigan, and they're continuing to invest. They want to grow, they want to hire, and I think as long as they can continue to see their way through, we're going to support them 100%, as will everybody else in the financial community. But I think the biggest thing, though, is for us to try to get as much visibility as we can into the clouds that seem to be on the horizon.
Yeah. I want to remark on something. I get the paper, I read the Free Press and the Detroit News every day, and you always put an ad in. Bank of America always sometimes has a full page ad just talking about, you've talked about diversity and equity and inclusion. And today I just want to remark that it was about the mental health of your employees. Can you tell me, Matt, a little bit about why you decide to do that? I think just in such a public way and declaring what you like your workplace to be.
Sure. Well, being a great place to work is a core part of our business strategy. Our strategy is called responsible growth. One of the 4 tenets is you've got to grow sustainably if you want to be successful. And a big chunk of that is you have to be a great place to work. Because in its simplest form, a business like ours is 200,000 people connected globally by computers. There you go. And it's not the computers that are all that special, it's the people. And so making sure that we are trying to be a great place to work and that people can bring their whole selves to work is a big part of what we do. And so what we find when we talk about the way we run the company is that resonates with a lot of folks. And so we're happy to share how we do it, ideally so that we can learn from our others as well.
Right.
But a lot of the things that we do around mental health, because really it starts from the inside out. So we say you have to put your own oxygen mask on first.
Right.
So making sure that you're taking care of mental health, your physical health, and that extends to your friends and family as well. If you can do all that, you can bring your whole self to work. Obviously, you're a better employee, but also you stay more connected to the company, which is one of the things we want to do. We want to keep all our good people for as long as we can.
I was going to say, and grow and retain talent, because that is one thing that all companies are fighting for right now is that talent pipeline.
Number one priority for all businesses, including ours. In fact, we've got a great program that we call Pathways, that we we recruit from low to moderate income areas. And we use organizations like Year Up to help upskill and reskill people. And we welcome them into our company as apprentices. After a short period, they become full-time $22 an hour employees. And so what we do is solve an employment challenge. And we also help drive employment in low to moderate income areas that we know are overrepresented with unemployment. And they're also tend to be communities of color.
And you are targeting directly that middle wage job, which is not a low wage. That is a living wage that then can grow to home ownership, can spark a trajectory in someone's life that is truly life-changing.
Yeah, that's right. Our lowest wage in the company is $22 an hour. That's $45,000 a year if you're working full-time. And we're on our way to $25 an hour by 2025.
Matt, it is always good to have you here, and you talk about a range of things, and can't wait to see your panel this afternoon. And thanks so much for the time. It's always good to see you.
Great to see you, too, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, Matt Elliott from Bank of America, and we'll be right back. Stay with us.